Good evening and welcome to the Town Government Study Committee Open Forum, where we'd like to hear from the public tonight. This is going to be audience participation. As you can see around the room here, we have various boards that have questions on them, and we'd like you to come up and answer them or put your ideas down on them, and then after we do that, we can have a discussion about what you've written. My name's Jonathan Smith. I'm chairman of the committee. Our secretary is Anthony Torrey, who was ill and not able to come tonight. Our other members are Christian Balish, Rob Garrity, and Tony Kennedy. So here's how we're going to do it. We have, I'll go through what these questions are. The first question is, what works well in Norfolk town government and decision making? Hopefully this won't be blank. The second one is, what could be improved or changed in town government and decision making? Perhaps this is one that we're really interested in getting your input tonight. Number 3 is a communication issue that people talk about in town. How do you find out about what is happening in Norfolk town government? Hopefully that one's not blank either. Number 4, what would help you become more engaged with town government or others who are not involved? We'd like your ideas about that. Since we don't have a town newspaper or anything anymore, we'd like to get your ideas about how things are communicated and should be communicated. And the last one is, if anything in the first 4 you couldn't answer, please put additional comments there. We have markers for you to write. Each member of the committee that's here tonight will be at a board to be able to help you put your ideas up on the chart. And we'll take about, we'll see how it goes. 15 or 20 minutes for everybody to get up to the boards and give your opinions. Then we'll meet in a session and go over what you've written and perhaps get more input directly from you. So, have at it.
And there's no particular order. You can start at any one you'd like. There'll be one of us at each board. Okay. Rob, since you're here last, thank you. I'll get one as well. Or other. You take other.
This was going to go wherever's closest.
Left to right. See, this is going to be tough not to be too partisan or too opinionated.
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for.
What's your
Yeah, but
opinion?
it's not going to change.
Oh,
Well, for some context on this one. So our committee is supposed to be looking at ways to engage the citizenry better and get them more involved.
Thank you.
No,
So
I was just.
I guess.
we also want to know, like, what should we not
Let's
worry
see.
about? What is working well that our committee doesn't, from your perspective, the committee doesn't need to focus their effort on, so we can focus on the things on these boards?
So your goal is really to get greater participation of residents into the governmental process?
Yes.
That's about right. Okay.
Well,
So we're already.
Yeah,
sure,
well, go
that's
for it,
one
yes.
aspect of what
Right.
will make a better government.
Right.
You know, are there things that we should change about structure? Are there things we should change about operations? It's a blank slate.
Right. Rob. Right, so it's not just about participation.
Well,
Because,
I know.
you know, so I have
You got- yeah.
I have
Did you guys want to come back?
Go ahead, yeah.
or not.
I'm gonna try to think of something. Yeah, no, don't, it's gonna be hard enough to be politically correct without getting catty.
Well, there's also not many names on here, so this is just for our team to bring back and go through as a whole.
Are they videotaping?
Yes, they are.
Make sure you do like Belichick. So anyway, no lip reading. What works well in Norfolk town government? Well, certainly I like the town meetings.
Some of those might
Um,
come over to that.
I know, I was thinking the same
Oh,
thing.
yeah, you're.
They overlap somehow, yeah.
What about town meetings, do you like?
the fact that when they hold them
Okay.
versus, you know, a city government where it's, I don't know what replaces town meeting
David,
for city government.
this is not the
Short of
95
family
thesis.
questions.
You wanna leave space for others.
Well,
You have reps.
You could use keywords and we could
I don't
sell
think
your
you
You're
have
meeting.
reps.
you're really
Okay, just another
boiling it
layer.
down to
We're
a few.
closer.
There are more participants potentially than the norm for that. And I think that's what can be really attractive for a town, for
Those
attracting
are the things you
residents.
want to find out about, is that the idea?
Feel more participatory.
No, it says, how do you find out about what is happening in Norfolk town government?
Yeah.
At elections, via community
Oh.
members,
Oh, okay.
website, but frequently not updated.
And there's obviously cons on this too.
The only thing that gets
Because
updated
when-
timely is
so
the
what
election
gets
results.
one to actually participate?
Right, it's,
They
Remember when they
do.
weren't.
I remember that
Well,
too.
I
I don't
think
think
the
they have any
current
one person that's,
trend of
whose job is to update the website.
fine.
the
No,
face,
this
the
can-
Facebook,
Well, they'll
community
update
page
the
I mean, that's
website.
part of
and
their
is
do-
job.
my greatest
Yeah.
source, which I answered that question.
Huh?
to
Well, I think the IT piece is supposed to make sure that it works so that people
Yes.
can
Oh,
put,
yeah.
Current,
the
current
various boards can
information.
put
Good
stuff
point.
on
I
it.
also
Yeah.
get the,
I think sometimes
various
that's
board
That's right, Jeff. I
email
forgot that should be number one.
announcements for the meetings with an
Let's
agenda.
change my numbers.
That's
I'll start
okay.
them.
Have a high
I'll
level
start.
idea of what's happening.
And this is like the one that the town sends out, the town alerts that you can sign up for.
Is that what, yeah, you have to sign up.
Right.
Yeah.
You're on TV, this is being taped.
Alerts, if you will, for the town meeting, for board meetings.
Yeah.
So I've signed up for the selectmen, the zoning, conservation, you know, all that. I think that's a great method of more one-to-one.
Okay.
I think with doing this, you also become known with town officials that you are
Have to put it up.
interested in what's going on. So you're announcing yourself as a concerned citizen.
Am I missing anything there? Did I capture that, or is there something else to it? Engage with town officials by handwriting is terrible.
No, it's not that, it's
Think
color.
would work
I,
for
Oh, sorry.
my
finding
contrast
out?
is difficult.
You, you normally go to
Yeah,
the
no, I
websites?
don't- you don't have to
Do you
change
use
it.
a computer quite a bit?
I do, but not to go to the
Um,
website of this. And so,
Yes, that's
you know,
fine.
neighbors, friends, neighbors do.
Yeah.
And that's how I hear about it.
Well, I'm hearing also something about like,
See this
So
one?
there's like, you know, there's
it's
so
both
many
about the
issues
social
that are
media
going
piece,
on.
but also it seems
So
like
many
you're
here
saying it's,
that you can't
It's a two-way street.
because of the size of our town, you can be kind of known for,
Well, the thing is, the website.
people will know who you
is
are. You sit down and Jeff
tell
says,
you
oh, the person that has
current
been
events.
posting it,
Yeah.
like, I know who that is, even though I
Some
don't
of
know
the
who she is.
department.
Right, well, I've met her through another method, but,
I don't, you know, besides
I've
a newspaper,
Yeah.
I don't know what would.
made my acquaintance
what you
with
would do.
Carol Green
Right.
over the past number of years, and I think,
see.
well, actually,
I see
I
it
said
has
it on
some
my
kind
board
of a
meetings over a particular
section,
subject, so that's why.
website is for current events.
But I think definitely the size of this
Yeah.
one does allow
Other than,
Yeah,
for
something
engaged.
you
Yeah.
can read something that
Used to.
you don't have to
It
spend
does
a lot
this.
of time, because nobody
Right.
wants to like,
I've never
I
seen
have to
that.
go to a website to
Yeah.
find out what's going on, and that's get
Yeah.
bills on board.
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
like
the headline
pull it
doesn't
up.
tell you everything.
It doesn't
Yeah.
tell us everything. So if there was something on the
People
webpage.
care about the issue.
I know, I could get a little testy.
There's a whole
There was
history of
something
why.
weekly that was put out, you know, like on a Monday or something.
I know what you got, I take that volunteers.
See, this is
Yeah,
the
review.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
most boards have boards.
Show up in
So
every
we're
one
like-
of them.
That's our, most are appointed, right?
Yeah.
Be a way to
Yeah.
help
Trying to figure out
Sure.
where
Where it shows
we
up.
had for,
Normally,
Yeah.
we're like banging
where it
the drum
was
to find
lots of
people. So,
things to do,
yes,
like,
like
that
more
would be,
representation.
I think that belongs
Looks like
on
the
here.
town.
Right,
It's
what's
seems
that,
like
right,
so
How
people
to-
show up.
right.
What
You know,
could be
no blank eyes.
provide information.
Facebook.
I'm on TV now, apparently.
Right.
But
That's
so,
how I get
so
my information on Facebook.
should it be in a bylaw
Yeah.
that appointed boards have to have a balance? As opposed to
I think as long as it somehow uses that term balance, as opposed to there I mean, I know everybody wants committees to be on, so there's
I think
never
that probably covers
a tie and vote, but.
frequently not updated.
This
That
one's-
tells you maybe it should be updated, so
Exactly.
that.
In real life.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, this is
Yes.
missing a lot of information.
Right.
Like ADA coordinators is not cited. The ADA coordinator doesn't know who they are.
Well, no,
That-
I'll give
that-
you an example, why,
Say, well,
Our
how
public
should be represented.
Mhm.
it's all that.
I asked the PD, they said, no. Yeah, they don't.
Is that because it's
There
me?
used to
Yes.
be an ADA compliance committee.
Yeah, that's right,
Because you
but that
can
was
get into
public
so much
knowledge,
of it,
right? Is that
Appointed
Appointed by the board of
Past
selectmen.
general.
Oh, seriously?
And
Really?
general.
Well,
There's some
I'm
good
gonna,
things on it.
I
I
stay.
thought that was
Yes.
required.
It's required to have an ADA coordinator.
Oh, there you go.
Unfortunately,
Well, no,
it's
just
higher than
because-
that.
Well, I jumped the hospice
Like
house.
when I
I
tried to
don't
tell
know in terms
Chad
of,
that he
it was it, how to help the
Like I am.
department function.
Well, by
So you
default,
need-
yeah, if nobody else is, he is, right?
Yeah.
And then
It's
just passed it off to somebody else who has no idea.
Trying to find a more representative
Description.
of whatever.
So it's just shuffled
Because
through.
we'll have people on here who are not comfortable.
My
coming
non-
forward.
this-
Don't know what they have to know.
Well, no.
You know,
It worked, so we do recruiting.
Oh, this one, wait, I can read what that one's
Right.
about. Thank you.
You have to recruit.
Right.
We need
But
work.
one issue, I'm leaving, that's definitely sad. Minimum number of residents at meetings before a vote, yep. Or if you're attending as a citizen, they recognize that you're sitting in the
There you
meetings
go.
and ask a question before they take a vote.
Right,
That happened to me.
Oh, yeah, they do it all the time.
You can sign up and you'll get
That's
notifications.
an interesting
Town
idea,
officials
yeah.
That'd be,
Yeah.
put that another.
Yeah.
Then that
Sure.
implies
Additional
that there's somebody
elections.
that sends out the notification.
That would have helped me.
No, so it's a system where,
Is it automatic?
I'm a
so
little.
yeah, so every, you can sign up for whatever committees you want to
Yeah, I
follow.
didn't get
Yeah.
any, we're not
So you know
even
how
like.
when we have a meeting, we have to like post it,
Yeah.
and that post goes up, it triggers Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't think that's.
Like in 1986.
And how is that done by phone?
Yeah, 94 when we bought our house over on,
Oh.
I think there might be a
Marshall.
text option, but you sign up and you can say how do you want to get notified.
Ford.
You
So I'm
know,
not sure I
orientation, that's
think
nice.
as somebody.
Maximum number of years, oh, yeah. In other
You have
words,
to reverse 911,
yeah.
right? I don't think so,
If you want people to show up,
Could be
because that's one way to send the blast out to
I
everybody
was
at
very
town
disappointed
meetings,
with
such a date.
Yeah.
The elections are whenever, you know, first week of April. When are the elections in Norfolk? Are they first week of
May.
April?
Appointed in last.
They're not with everybody else, first week of April, first Tuesday in April? Huh? No?
Somebody I thought they were in.
it's interesting. People don't want to say how it's.
Yeah, yeah.
David, I know you know. When are elections in Norfolk for town?
In May.
Okay, that's what I thought,
May,
okay.
not in April, huh? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why this one.
When in May?
Right,
Yeah,
it
A lot
should
of
be.
towns are April 1st.
Yeah,
Should be
yeah.
here, 'cause it is
Or the
April.
first Tuesday in
Prevent people
April.
from coming to town
Yeah.
meeting before
When in
issue
May
an
is it?
I don't remember. You're just trying to upload.
No, but I mean, is it
What was I
always
gonna put down? I was
like
thinking of something.
the last Monday of the month or the second Tuesday?
It's always a week before
I
the
guess the one thing that I was thinking
Ah.
that when I was trying to work on the bill
Back it up for the elections.
is that assumptions were made about
Come on, Jeff, you got some ideas?
until someone made mention of it. There was
Oh,
sometimes
of the official people here. Oh my God, it was embarrassing
Yeah.
to be sitting at the table with them.
Yeah.
But it was not listening to the argument I was given. They just listened because they assumed
6 years of
that
school
I'm meaning
committee,
something else.
having a really close
And it's like-
relationship with the
Yeah,
police
it
department,
happened nice.
having some discussions with some of the officers about
Good street? Yeah.
some of the houses that are, and there's such a disparity of the rooms we have in the town. All through the
Tear it
racks.
down and build it
I was like, how can this happen? This is insane, nobody knows about this. That's why I created it, because someone's gotta do something. They were just kind of left and running.
So we just anyone go?
Originally it was established so I could try and help them, but the problem was, I after about a month, I said, you know what? I've tried to go through the school, I've tried to go through guidance counselors, and that's gonna take time. This is not
Fine.
everybody. So John and I, we sat down and planned it, we talked about the financial side of it, and said, it's probably expensive, because we open it up to the town.
Well, they live next door.
At max is at 100 people, so when we do the math.
This reminds me of
So,
cable.
50 to
One of
75.
your points, which is,
Do people donate money to?
well, I think some people can't get
Part of the
engaged
reason
because
is that
the
when
only
you start
option to
getting
get
involved
engaged
in
is
that
to be
project,
in a
then you
physical
gotta
location at a
concern
certain
yourself
time.
with assets, liability.
That limit.
Now you gotta sit there and worry about, okay, now I have to file a 503C to do it, like, I just wanna simplify this as much as possible. So the open meeting, the way you don't want to see
Money
is,
to have
is
somebody-
John.
Every Monday morning, I'll update the website.
So what discussion, people come in there, donate, no, for the forks, or spoons, no carrot, hey, just a heads up, guys, whoever wants to do it. I'll do that, I don't want any- People try to do money, I'd love to open it up, but I just don't know how to have that right there.
Because everything's answered.
And that's some things that.
Financial responsibility.
It happens every day.
Yeah, that's a different, that's a different thing, and it's done intentionally.
They do the results out of it. Shit.
Okay, nice to have, okay.
Do you remember that, John? You used to go to the Grange on election night. They got the local election, the town election, and you go to the Grange, you get results there. It ended before I started running. I remember going with Jerry. That's it.
She's done her homework.
Wow.
She's done.
Yes, she ended up emailing.
No,
us.
no, no, it's going on. I remember when I moved here in '94. That might have been one of the last years.
Yeah, some town orientation, she was just talking about. On the Norfolk community, we've been talking about. Welcome to Verizon.
She does her part.
Yeah.
What would be improved or changed in town government?
Especially like with civic involvement spin, you hear all the committees we have. This is what these folks do, this is what these folks do. This is what the time commitment would be.
I've had a number of people.
Good enough for me.
Community supplements.
Behave like a professional.
And say, I want to know what's out there. I'm like, oh, there's a whole slew of things.
You can break it down like starter committees.
Absolutely.
Here's the easy ones to get on.
You know? And that's been perfect. So here's the information becoming, what are you involved in doing?
It's Mary Ellen.
List of people, what they do, your committees, the chairs. That don't look like 65.
That's the process.
You built it.
No, you can just go
You need
around
more
and
coffee? Is that
fill
what
in
you
on
said?
these charts.
I have to
what
learn
you
how to
like.
spell.
Oh.
Gotcha.
No, my name's not on it.
Term limits.
How do you find out from the Jones?
Okay, we had a couple more just come in.
How are you?
What do you name somebody?
Yeah,
How do you find out? Oh, that's you?
No, it wasn't me.
Oh.
It's Mary on Facebook. She's the official poster.
Oh. Of what?
Town news.
And I started
You know,
on the
Stony
website?
Brook. She does Facebook, community page.
Yeah.
Have you used Facebook?
I've signed up for the community page, yeah.
Yeah.
I just,
And she'll post things like, of course, she.
is she one of the admins or?
I don't think so. She
No.
just, yeah, anybody can post.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Local pages, published in Medway.
Hmm? How long were you with Sutton?
Just 2 terms, 6
Two,
years.
yeah. You picked voluntarily, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
do that.
Stoneham, from Stoneham until recently,
Yeah, I hear
just
you.
moved here.
That's, isn't that the point of a the town meeting, is to have discussion?
No,
We like Norfolk, it's
don't
just
think that.
incredibly quiet and, you know, all these
Otherwise, it's
questions
very
about how do you find out about
You got rid of it.
That's a
perfect example of,
uninformed.
so.
Have you been?
How are you?
Quorum requirement.
How's the fan?
Excellent.
How do you get that to happen?
Oh, she got the contact. She worked on it. I saw her on election day. She said they were. Oh, so changing thing one time. That means you're indispensable.
They did that this year, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's in the process, but done.
Oh, good.
Her room is now.
I don't know what kind of
Nice.
turnout there was.
I agree with that. Nice. Where's the,
No bed, so you can't come home.
Can't come back, no.
what about,
That or Norfolk, maybe Norfolk Community.
it's her wedding?
Oh, Judith.
Oh, this year?
Go to town, yeah.
Wow.
Option.
And how's Zach doing?
He's great, he's in his junior year, so.
Where is he?
Brandeis.
Right, right. No, I didn't know what he was doing, but I saw him too, you know, in the last year.
Lockdown drag-out.
No, about what?
It was like, it's right after the election.
There's all kinds of towns always do it, but I agree, like, once a year. Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You know, going through this.
From Vincent?
Right? So.
No, he didn't mention it. Isn't that
Isn't
funny?
exactly intuitive as to what the last one is.
No, he actually, when he does reference you, it's always in a pleasant way. Maybe he thought I'd be like, really? Why? Why at this point about any of it? You know what I mean? With anybody.
I thought it was funny.
You can go wherever you want. Wherever speaks your interest, guys. Doing good.
Working courier. Yeah. Yes.
Before.
Career energy is.
Nice to meet you, Imperial Courier.
Sorry.
Goes on the.
20 years after that, that was going well.
So the person that I wrote it, but the person that talked about it said that they would be increasing using Facebook, social media, and internet in general.
Oh, yeah,
Has been
of course,
helpful.
of course, yeah.
I won by 25 votes. They demanded a recount.
So,
Wow.
so we're going to, we'll go back together in probably 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll like kind of read through and then we'll
Wow.
ask questions and clarify things that they said and kind of
Huh.
check what they're hearing.
That's amazing.
And then our,
Yeah, I
our
remember.
group will take it back after that and kind
Don't
of
say
help us
anything to
prioritize
anybody,
that.
but just
This is for us to kind of know what's working well that maybe we don't need
Started out
to
being
change.
like
We don't need to change everything, right? It's just, what are the things that we can use to either build assets on, or what do we not need to, you know? So say we had something we thought we wanted to look at, but as one person said, don't touch this, right? Then we just say, you know what? And we don't look at town meeting, maybe we focus on something else.
He's the one I did.
Because I know this with the state.
Frank works for me.
Oh, does he?
Right.
Yeah.
So the Shepherd
DOT.
said, right, so you wanna do something about this, I can comment to you, one, I'm not necessarily
How
something.
would you do that?
Funny how that worked.
Like one
He came back
directional
and
stick,
beat
so-
TV. That's how
So that people can help that.
I beat him by
Is that true, right?
25 or so, and 9 years later, he decided to run against me. I was going up against him.
Yeah, that would be
He
nice.
beat me. And he did 9 years.
There's too much happening.
He is. He really is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the number.
I'm gonna add this actually.
One time he was in
Behavioral professional.
sponsored director of the rest areas or something.
Yeah, he was working for real estate. Now he does.
Are you the chair of this?
You put this,
Works in real
Well,
estate.
in Norfolk
Too,
government.
but, yeah.
Meetings,
He's
unless
got
they're
a
up in
busy-
World
busy guy.
Social logistics officer.
Increase in social media.
It all comes together. This
Size
guy's
of
a mailman,
Allows
Tracy. What he does is
people are generally well
he's up on the
intentioned.
gossip who's about to sell, who wants to buy. He's very successful. Frank works with him,
On
or
Facebook.
used to anyway,
Because I think I hear from the
part-time.
Why don't you run for it? I'm reading all this. It's good. Junior. It's not nice. Wishes he was. Right. But I missed him. He was young though. And he was gone far away, and he was only 16, so that was hard for me. No, I agree. I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's just like, you know, I give this analogy to people whose kids went away to college this summer and talk to me about how I dealt with Chris Roth in 2016, which was very, very hard. I wasn't showing him. I thought it was hard. But yeah, that would not be pretty. But anyway, what I said was, so it's like this. Freaking out about because I wasn't there yet. I mean, when he was in 6th grade, we were all ready. So
I think we still went down the line.
it's been a relatively successful experience. I find successful. They graduated. They had maybe had some bumps in the road. And they
Get
didn't.
arrested.
Yeah, they're not. Exactly. Exactly.
No, I didn't.
You know what I'm saying?
There's more paper.
I think they're happy that
Keep
they got
going.
there.
I thought you meant I
They have a
wasn't.
goal.
No.
Yeah. Of course, you're gonna miss them for time. That's what I did. So when you went last summer, was it? Yeah. I didn't show him. They're starting to look at some. Yeah, they're starting to look at some. He's still really unclear on what he wants to do. So. Exactly. Yeah, I would be very happy if he went to school in Boston. He's not looking that way, but we'll see.
So, have you been making comments, Rob?
No.
No, it's not.
No, this is to hear.
This is to hear from the public.
Not really.
You're not.
You pay taxes here, don't you?
No.
No, no?
Oh, no. You
You're
didn't have
tax
anything else
exempt?
going? Once you're selectman, you don't have to pay taxes ever again.
Ever?
Ever.
Transfer to Norfolk.
Actually, I think if they're former selectmen, they deliberately raise. I guess maybe the assessors decide whether you help them or hurt them.
Yeah, I'm ready to get some water. Hey Rob, do you know approximately the number of town employees there are?
Used to be about 200.
If you're including the
Did that
school.
include the school?
Oh, not
It's like
the,
210.
not talking
Not
about
the
the,
school.
not the
But
school.
Well, you know, it's just the.
Just our
local
side?
Town side.
It's like 75.
Are
You
you
got-
including the DPW in there?
Yeah, include
Yeah.
the DPW. But DPW is not as big as you think.
How big is DPW?
Police are up to what, 22, maybe? Or 17 or 22. I can't remember. It's been a long time.
Fire is about 50.
Babe, is there a volunteer component to Norfolk Fire?
It's a call.
It's called, but I don't.
But they're all professional.
They get paid.
Oh, yeah. Everybody gets paid.
But there's,
Yeah,
it's
call.
staffed.
Yep.
It's staffed. Oh, yeah. But then the additional employees are on call. Call.
Right, if you're a call firefighter, you're guaranteed a certain amount of money to come, you're guaranteed to pay for 2 hours.
I think it's longer than 2, isn't it?
So 75 employees, so only 125 in the 2 schools?
I served years ago.
Doesn't that seem low? Not,
Not really.
no?
Well, how many grades you got? You got 6, 7 grades with preschool.
Pre-K.
8 grades.
All the way through the end of middle.
And if
They
there's
have-
5 teachers per grade, how many is there now? There used to
I
be
think it
4.
depends. When Christopher was in school, there was 8. But he had that big class that came
He
through.
was the bubble.
Yeah, he was a bubble class.
So it's
I think it's probably more like 6 now. Probably gonna go up to 8 again.
6 times 8 is 48. And then the administrators and the janitors. And then the aides.
You can do some good math.
I can do math.
Custodians.
The custodians and aides. I'm sorry.
So funny.
We had a janitor, I don't know.
When I'm at the high school and I call the guys that, I like to say that, you can never say the
Yeah, mine is a daycare that goes 3 to 5, so we're good.
Building services.
Yeah, there's that too, pardon me.
Building services.
All right, well, that's good to know.
Sanitary engineers, yeah, sanitary engineers.
Okay, because I was looking at this, and so I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, it'd be nice to annotate that with
Head
the
count.
number of people that
Yeah.
head count.
Well, you can do that in the town report, you can find that out.
Oh, it's in there?
It's in there somewhere, yeah.
So show me where,
Probably in the budget area, just probably.
oh, here it is, never mind. Oh, no.
What are you looking for?
See how all the departments have the number of employees, but not the school? See, it could be right on there, because in parentheses it has the number. Is that what that means? 3 employees in registration, 10 in public safety? No? 1 in the county advisory board?
That's how many people are in committees.
Oh, I thought it was employees.
Public safety would be more than 10
Yeah.
combined, fire
Oh,
and
right.
police, yeah,
You're right.
And
Yeah.
dispatchers.
and admin.
Okay.
Is there anybody that wishes to add any comments before we move along with the second part of the meeting? Well, first, thank you all for coming and filling up our boards. We were a little concerned that they wouldn't be filled up with ideas and comments, but we're grateful for that. So I'd like to start by going through the boards that we have up here.
We asked that that just be tipped and then tilted.
Yeah. We had it that way for TV, I think. Okay, we'll start with the positive, and that is what works well in town government. And the first comment is town meetings, unlike city government, more overall participants, can attract new residents and fuels participatory government. One of our members of our committee is has come onto our board as a result of attending town meeting and finding out about this board. Increase in social media coverage. There's a community Facebook page. Town alert system for board meetings. And I don't know if there's a town alert system other than what we're getting right now from NCTV. Yes? Oh.
By that comment was meant I receive emails from the town, various boards, of their agendas and meeting time and place. So that, in and of itself, keeps me clued into what's being discussed at each board's meeting.
Okay, the next one is the size of the town allows for personal engagement with town officials. And that's what New England towns are all about. And that's what separates us from the rest of the country, I think. People are generally well-intentioned, and I think that's, from my 20-something years of experience in town government, I think that's a very true and accurate statement. Anybody who's been involved, almost everybody I've ever been involved with have been well-intentioned and have done a job to the best of their ability. Strong, fiscally responsible Board of Selectmen and Town Clerk's Office. And Board of Selectmen seeks consensus and agreement and seems to work well together. And we can come back to that with some of the other comments that we get later on. Our second board is what could be improved. First one is timeliness and delivery time of town warrants. And who wrote that up? What did you have in mind about that? It's all right.
I think it's, I wrote it because oftentimes it's down to the last minute. And frequently I'm reading the warrant as I'm sitting at town meeting. And that doesn't make me responsible. And subsequently I can't, or I don't feel comfortable in participating on that particular thing because I don't feel like I have a base knowledge.
Okay.
The method of delivery is with response to always referring that they can get it online, they can get it online. Well, there's many an elder that doesn't have online capacity, and there are many family members who don't have it either.
Okay, the next one is town orientation to newcomers and interested citizens as to elections and positions in town available. I'm going to go on, even though the number, I'm going to go right down to the bottom, even though that's numbers out of sequence. Clarify open meeting laws for social media for constituents, meaning how much involvement somebody can have without who they can talk to and how boards can talk to within themselves or to each other.
Can I clarify that as well?
Yeah.
So I wrote that based on a conversation I had with some folks, and if you're online, you'll see people tend to be very frustrated that they'll post about the roads or the schools or 40B, and they don't get responses from their public officials, and then there tends to be a continued conversation about how they're not being responsive. And there's a tension there because the town has to be careful about what they're allowed to say as town officials on public forums such as that. But I think the idea is that there needs to be better communication around what those laws are so that the public's not getting frustrated and understanding why they can't versus taking it with maybe a bad intention. That has kind of been problematic in the past. So that's kind of the crux of what that was supposed to say.
So I have a comment on that, and the comment is that the Division of Open Government in the Attorney General's office has online trainings about the open meeting law, a series of, 6 videos, and they also hold training sessions. So anybody who wants to find out can easily get the information, but I agree with Kristen that it's not necessarily obvious to people that that training exists or where to go for it. So I support her idea here.
Was that my idea? Yeah. Someone else's idea. I just tried to write it down. But thanks.
Okay, the next one is additional elections of town officials. Somebody wrote that. Is there any particular office that's appointed now that somebody had in mind to make elected? Okay.
Is that what was meant by that?
Is that what that comment meant?
It was me. So basically, there's just elections of officials, and we need more. We need limits. We need, just in general, with the officials that are serving in our boards. They've been on there a long time, and I feel that we need new people on there. So we need additional elections. We need new people. We need to find a way to get more people involved and stop having the same people on there with their same, ways of communicating, which aren't necessarily the best for all the parties of Norfolk. And we need to just get better at it.
So you mean something like a term limit or something for elected officials? That
Term limit, that's one of the things. That's like on number 7. Shorter terms.
Are you saying right now, I don't know, if all of these different boards, somebody could be on it for forever if they chose to be? Yeah, that's kind of messed up. I'm with you. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Okay, next one is minimum number of residents required to be at a town meeting before a vote or an issue is made. This is usually called a quorum requirement. And how large a quorum are we talking about?
I don't know, but we've had issues that have been voted on, and the procedures that are involved in getting somebody to vote, whether what you're doing is right or wrong, is messed up. And they don't really tell you what you need to do to get people to come to the meetings and vote on whatever it is that they're supposed to be voting on. So you have only a few people that are coming to the meetings, because they're specifically looking for your issues of whatever it is. And they're the only ones that are voting on it. And then you're at this town meeting, and maybe there's 40 people out of however many thousands of people here at Norfolk, and these 50 people are going to vote, and then they all vote at this meeting, and then they say, no, you can't do it because these 50 people voted no out of thousands and thousands of people in Norfolk. And so it's just...
Everybody can attend town meeting. I mean, town meeting is an open forum. If they choose not to come, they choose not to come. That means whatever it means to them. I'm not going to make guesses. But if that were really to become a bylaw, we'd never have a town meeting.
Not necessarily a meeting, but voting on something.
So you're going back to what he said in terms of needing a quorum to be able to vote.
Exactly.
So I would go back to making probably the same statement, saying that you'll have a certain number present, and then they couldn't vote because there wasn't a quorum, so you go through every bit that doesn't require a vote, so to speak, and you're going to have another meeting. I don't know how best to get around it, except to say that I'd go back to the timeliness, the method of delivery, the informational sessions. We used to have informational sessions associated with warrants, especially if it was like something new, so that you were informed. And I think maybe that's what we need to do, get back to pre-meetings and yuck it up. Now, I'd also say that there's the school group, the school parents, who if they want something to get through, they will go door to door, they will pass leaflets, they'll use the mail, they'll have coffee hours, whatever.
But if you're new to Norfolk, you don't know that this is happening. You have an issue.
And I think that's what's written
Exactly.
around the room. If you're new, you don't know what.
That you should be doing that.
Right, you
And
don't
then
know what to
then
do.
it affects the decision of whatever it was your issue
Right,
was.
right.
And it's just not right. And you have town officials coming and saying, we don't agree with you. You shouldn't be allowed to do this. And then, 30 more people say, because this town official said it, well, that's the way we're going to vote. They don't know the issue. They don't know anything about it. But just because this one town official came to this meeting and voted against it, you have all these other people voting against it, and then the whole thing fails.
That's endemic of.
So maybe you want an orientation meeting.
Yeah, and the pre-meetings, I think, even though they may not have been well attended in the past, should be promoted that way. I've seen a lot of chatter on the Norfolk community page that is very participatory. Maybe we're hearing from a lot of the same people more times than we would like, but it's engaging. Good or bad, there's chatter. And I think that type of forum should be utilized to orient people, as well as, and I think Kevin Calcutt, he's posted to talk a lot about 40B from a factual point of view. And that's very helpful for a whole lot of people that probably never speak up, but they're more informed now. A lot of people don't use the computer or those online mediums, but I think maybe we're seeing majorities are, and it's a great vehicle to kind of get issues out there and have an open discussion. People are more free to chime in. And if experience is a clue, they try to be polite about it. And you glean a lot of information about what people are thinking that way as well. So the pre-meeting type things, and then when I look at these emails for what's gonna be discussed at a Board of Selectmen meeting, and they're talking about warrants, they just rattle off all the numbers of the warrants. It means nothing to me. I know from a message point of view, that's the most expedient thing to cite, but people don't know what that means. And where can they backtrack to figure it out? I'm sure there's a way, I just personally don't know. Yeah, it's worth circling.
Yeah, we're circling around. And then I guess we have maximum number of years a selectman can serve. That sort of goes back to the term limit that we were talking about for various boards. We could have if there was interest, we could draft a town bylaw that would put term limits on elected officials. And I don't know. I disagree with the last one. Behave like a professional. I think most of the people that involve town government do behave very well. It's just from my experience.
Can I ask what number 6 and 8, if people would be willing to talk a bit about what they mean by those things, so that it could be helpful for us as a committee?
Oh, the one
6,
about
yes. Both, I'm just curious what people are.
Right. I will talk about 6, and I'd also want to talk a little bit about 5, which we didn't discuss. So one of the things that we have is people who show up at town meetings for one article and try to time their arrival to be before that article is discussed. We'll vote on that article. There'll be a motion to reconsider in order to prevent further reconsideration, and then people will leave. And I think that it's desirable that people actually attend the full town meeting, not show up just for a single article. And I would like to provide an incentive for them to stay for the entire town meeting. So that was 5. Yes, the idea is not to lock out reconsideration. Right now what happens, the bylaws say it can only be reconsidered within 2 articles of the time it was made, and it can only be reconsidered on the same night that it was made. And what happens typically is that one person who really is in favor of it will move to reconsider in order to, it can only be reconsidered once. And so somebody who's in favor will move to reconsider, the reconsideration will be voted down, and there can be no future reconsideration. So it's locked in. So I would like to prevent the lock-in to induce people to stay longer. With item 6, the issue is just that we have somewhere close to 7,000 registered voters in town, and typically there are around 200 people who show up at town meetings. There are, I don't know, 15 people here this evening, and I would have liked to see 200 here. There are committees that are, have openings, and basically what I hear is people complaining about the way town government works, or in their opinions fails to work, and yet they're not willing to make any commitment to do anything about it. And so I think I don't have a solution well, I have some ideas for 6, but I think there's a clear problem there. I'm not the author of 8, so I don't know who would like to address that.
Hi. I have experienced infrequently what I perceive to have been unprofessional behavior. And my perception was that I was not listened to, that there were assumptions made about my, quote, true intent, which was false. And I was insulted by it and feel as though I was treated poorly. It could have just been a moment in time. It's still vivid in my mind, but I expect everybody to be respectful towards each other and not dismiss each other. And I've seen, not necessary to me, but I've seen it, people being dismissed at various venues. So maybe it's simply a reminder that it's
Okay.
not gone unnoticed.
All right. Let's move on to the communication. How do you find out about what's going on? Number one is elections. How do we find out about elections these days? We don't have a newspaper. We don't have a lot of communication that we probably should have about when elections are.
So I didn't write this, but I think actually, and this came upon me, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think elections are a way that we find out about things because that's when people talk about stuff. I think that's what the
Okay.
writer might have.
That's what you meant?
Yes.
Okay.
It's amazing how much you can find out at the elections.
Okay.
I work at the elections, and it's not just town gossip, it's a lot of stuff. Really?
Okay.
And that's just a few people that get that knowledge.
All right, committee,
Correct, those were there.
committee members is another way of,
Community members.
oh, community members, I'm sorry. Website, I assume they mean the town website,
Yes,
but frequently not updated.
correct.
How big a problem has that been?
Not as much of a problem recently. Not as much of a problem recently in terms of website not being updated, but the one who does it the fastest is in the town clerk office. Others, there's times that it's difficult to find things because it hasn't been updated.
Okay. The next one,
Can I ask a question about the website? So, does anyone know if there's a paid town webmaster, or, I mean, is that someone's job? Because if it is, it should be updated. That's your job.
I know there's a town IT person who's focused on town government, and there could be two that are split with the schools or one dedicated to schools. But I would think each department has to tell him, Board of Health, I need to get this information out and get it updated. I don't know if every department can do it themselves. Like I remembered seeing about this meeting tonight, I believed it was Facebook. I went on the town webpage this week and I couldn't find it. It said meetings posted for tomorrow. I said, this is a problem for the study committee.
I went on the website today.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
It's there.
The meeting for today.
Yes, you go into the calendar, but you'd have to know that you have to go into the calendar instead of it just shooting up like an alert or, today's news. And the other thing is that I actually went in to see if by chance we might have a new town administrator, and the old town administrator's name is there. So to me, that's an example of, especially in the snow and the ice, people are going to be calling the town administrator's office.
Right.
We have a problem on such and such a road. We have this, we have that, and that's not the person to contact anymore.
Right.
So the question isn't just the update. The question is, in lieu of that, who do we reach out to?
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is that probably is the most easily remedied thing we're talking about here tonight, because if our tax dollars are paying someone to do that as their job, yes.
My bet is the IT guy. It's
Yeah.
not a web guy. That's the guy who fixed the network connections, who is running down a new monitor for somebody. It's not, and it's two different competencies.
No, I understand that.
So
We don't have a webmaster.
No.
No. Okay. So I guess all I'm saying is it's still easily remedied
Right.
if the town administrator makes it a priority that the website be updated, because that's where people get their information, and that's your job, and that's what you're getting paid for, needs to happen, or you need to find a new job, really.
and as of the date of this meeting, we don't officially have a new town administrator yet.
But we
The
do.
person doesn't start until the end of February, I believe.
Oh, but there is one.
There will be one,
Doesn't
yes.
start yet, right?
Yeah.
But see, wouldn't you think that's a perfect example? Thank you for that information. But wouldn't you think, knowing that we're going to have a town administrator, that you don't have to necessarily put the name in, you could say, we'll be welcoming our new town administrator on such and such a date.
Well, it was in the paper, so we all know his name.
What paper? You didn't have a paper?
It was in the Milford Daily News
Oh, that's a good place.
and the Sun Chronicle.
Comes up, it was somebody posted it online, and he's the who's our new administrator.
Which is why it
So-
probably got in the Milford Daily News, because they serve Franklin.
Someone on Norfolk community page posted it on Facebook, and it pointed to the link in Milford Daily News. And then I went to a business and I picked up the Free Country Gazette because it's no longer delivered to my house. And it says, guy from Franklin is going to Norfolk as town administrator. It's the same, exact same article that was in Milford, was printed in the paper in Franklin. I was not on our website. I was at a social gathering recently, and somebody could say, "What's up with the public safety building?" And I could give them a 2-sentence answer. You know, what's up with the town administrator? And I could give them the 2-sentence answer because I watched all the government programs, and they were like, "What? You know, why can't we get that every week?"
Okay, so the next,
Can I make a quickie comment?
oh, I'm sorry.
It just sounds like we need to have a consistent place where news is delivered by the town, not just sometimes it's over here, sometimes it's over here. It depends on what reporter shows up.
Like in a paper.
I'd be happy with the website that was updated.
You know, and I would too, because frankly, I don't use Facebook and never will.
So does anybody know about this, I guess, I don't know if I'm focused on it because I know it or because I know of her, but there's a woman named Eileen Siegel who posts all the updates on the town meetings on the community page. And I think she does that just as a volunteer and a courtesy.
Is that on Facebook?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, so what I'm saying is, I mean, that's fabulous that she does it, right? So the community page is a page on Facebook. But, I mean, it's a little odd that, not on her half, on behalf of the town, that we don't have a person that does that publicly, but we have a volunteer that does it. Just strange. I mean, the whole communication in town is off.
The town calendar uses a service from something called Our Town Government. It's possible to subscribe to everything that is happening, all the Norfolk meetings, in which case you get them mailed to you, or you can subscribe to meetings of particular committees, like, for example, the Government Study Committee, in which case you get notices of the Government Study Committee mailed to you. So I guess I'd like to make people aware of using the Our Town Government service, which covers, I don't know, something like 20 towns or so, but Norfolk is one of them.
Is that paper mail, US mail,
No.
or email?
Email.
It's what Eileen's actually posting, so if you look at the, sorry. So yeah, so I recognize like the text, so essentially Eileen's getting those and just reposting them on the Facebook page to also let people know that way. But that's what I think this was we were talking about. You can sign up. So I think she was just reposting something there as well for courtesy.
Okay, so I guess the next item, I think, have we fully discussed NCTV's involvement in the process of getting the communication out to people?
I have watched the replays or the YouTube presentations of the various meetings. I find it very, very helpful, especially when there's a citation for what minute of the hour if you're looking for a particular topic. I don't get all of them, and not all of them are broadcast. There can be competing meetings, both at the same time, different parts of the building. One's videotaped and another is not. And that other could very well be an important meeting. So, especially in the wintertime, you've got older folks that are staying housebound. They're not going to come out at night, drive at night. The YouTube presentations are very valuable. I just don't think, I'd like to see the percentage go up a little bit more. And I'd be curious to know how much viewership we're getting, if that's even a statistic that cable can provide. I don't even know if there's a way to do that. Yeah. That would be, see how effective viewership on YouTube is good. Yeah.
You get that 76 share that the Pats got?
I'm Donna Jones. I used to be an employee of NCTV. I am no longer doing that. NCTV is paid by the cable subscriptions in town. The selectmen created the nonprofit organization so that the cable company collects money, they give it to Norfolk Cable Corporation, and they are in charge, per order of the selectmen, to use their equipment to serve the public with information. So they have the equipment in this room to videotape and go live. They had at first it was volunteers, and then they started paying people to record a meeting. You're right, if there's a meeting in this room, we can go live. If there's a meeting also downstairs, we can't go live, we videotape it, show it later. If the Recreation Committee has said, I don't need to be taped, there's certain committees that say, do you want to be taped? And they say no. And I, as a citizen, might go, well, what's going on at that meeting? And so they have started paying their people. They do have a limited budget as to where they allocate their people. NCTV, there's a Norfolk Cable Corporation, or NCTV, is in charge of public channel, which is your non-government things, and a government channel. So when there's no programming on, there's a bulletin board. It's got to be for government or nonprofit organization. There's no profit made from anything that's up there. So that's the source you can use. They're over across the street, 158 Main Street, and very helpful people that want to accommodate. We've also had the problem of people have a meeting and don't use a microphone. There's one particular meeting that 6 people can talk from the audience, and we've tried to train the members to say, microphone please, but it doesn't always work. KP Middle School, the person speaking stays in their seat and talking to the board at the table right in front of them. And I think I'm not hearing impaired, but I can't hear you. And there's a sign in the hallway that says if you are, according to ADA, they need to provide you capability, but you need to give them 15 days notice. Do I have to give them 15 days notice before every meeting? Use the microphone.
Can I make a mention? As you're talking, Donna, thank you. I agree. I've witnessed that as well. The minutes of meetings don't seem to be posted until months later. I could be wrong on that, but it seems to me as though that's a gray area where lots of improvement could occur. I didn't think of it till just now, but if you're not seeing that televised meeting because of conflict, your next step is to hit the meeting minutes. And sometimes the meeting minutes are very thin, and I don't know, maybe they could audio record. That could be just as helpful. Just an idea.
Okay. The next item is friends. And I guess that's part of the issues we're talking about here, that sometimes you can only find out about things from friends that are already involved, and that there should be more of these ways of communication so that you don't have to go and run to somebody and say what's going on, that you can find it out independently. I think we've talked about the Facebook community page. Reverse 911, that's supposed to be sort of limited to emergencies and stuff, but I suppose it can be used to remind people of a town meeting. But really it's for Amber Alerts and school cancellations and any public emergencies, which we might have had a few days ago with the kind of weather that we had if we had had a lot of trees come down.
have a reverse?
Yes, we do have reverse 911. We do have it. And the last one I got, I think, was for somebody, escapee from the prison, which is a good reason for reverse 911.
We got one Monday night for the schools. The schools were closed Tuesday.
I didn't get one.
I think they only call student parents. That
Oh, okay.
They know if you have a child in school. Big Brother's watching, yes.
Okay. The town website should have a current news events section. I think we've talked about that there wasn't, people were trying to get hold of meetings. There's not a bullet button on the front page of the website to just immediately tell you there's a meeting coming up. And that sometimes you only find out things from posted flyers like at the senior center and the library. And perhaps there needs to be some coordination about that. Sometimes as people just think of, well, I should get stuff out about my particular meeting, or if I'm a concerned citizen about a meeting that's going on, I want people to know about it and get out to it. So I'll post it at the senior center, the library, and the commuter rail station, as long as it doesn't blow away. All right, maybe we should go on to what would help you become more engaged with town government or others who are not involved. And the first one is to have a town-wide open discussion of the issues facing the town and reactivate the pre-meeting that we used to have about things that come up at town meeting and the town meeting budgets. Now, I realize the advisory board has some role here in doing some of these things. Their meetings are now videotaped. They're not televised live. But often the stuff about the budgets isn't really done in a way that people can understand what's going on. David?
Yeah, Jonathan, I want to point out that 1 and 4 are really separate issues.
Okay.
At a town meeting, we're constrained by Massachusetts general law and also by town bylaws about what can happen at the town meeting. And item 1 is suggesting that we have some sort of thing where more like New England town meeting from 250 years ago, where the town got together and was not constrained by a warrant, but rather could have a discussion about anything that people were concerned about the relative priorities of things, about how much resource they were willing to devote to particular issues. So that's not like the current town meeting. It's intended to be a much more broad-reaching and open discussion about things going on in town, or what should not be going on in town, or what should be but is not going on in town, whereas item 4 is specifically oriented toward an upcoming town meeting to give people an opportunity to ask questions about the warrant, to speak in favor or in opposition, to basically have a more open-ended discussion about the warrant than is currently permitted at town meetings.
And I believe moderators have tried to do that in the past with mixed results.
Right, so my recollection is that in 2017 and in some past years, there has been a pre-meeting like that, and as I think the one in 2017, if I am remembering correctly, had about 20 people show up in the audience, and that is for a town meeting that perhaps had 200 people out of 7,000 voters. I think that it would be useful to establish that as a regular practice and to encourage more participation in those town meetings, not town meetings, in those pre-meetings.
So you'd like a bylaw that would require that? Is that what we're talking about? Something where that does more than just have people decide, well, it would be nice to have a pre-meeting, but sort of codify it?
I hadn't thought it through that thoroughly. I think one could do it with the bylaw. one of the issues about doing it with a bylaw is one wants it to be very broad, and the open meeting law could constrain what you could do. And so I was seeing it as being an informal event, not a meeting of any board or committee, so that there could be this open and informal discussion about. I'm sorry, you're on item 4. I got drifted back to item 1. Right, item 4, yes, could be a bylaw, certainly. Thank you.
Okay, number 2 was, oh, sorry.
Right,
Go
yeah. My understanding is that the advisory board reviews the budgets, don't they? And make recommendations at town meeting as to how to spend money in different departments, no?
Yes, the advisory committee is required to do that and to make recommendations. And then what happens is the people who attend the town meeting vote in favor of the article or against it. There isn't that much opportunity to, at the town meeting, discussion is really constrained to one article at a time. So if people want to say, you know, having the library open an extra 10 hours a week is desirable, but it's even more desirable to put on an extra policeman or something. You can't have discussions that cross articles. And so it really does, just reacting to the advisory committee's recommendations is not the sort of broad, open discussion I would like to see.
All I'm suggesting is that if people really want to participate in budget things, they could attend. Could they not attend an advisory committee meeting and give their 2 cents worth?
Yes, they can attend an advisory committee meeting, and probably they will be offered an opportunity to give their 2 cents worth, but their 2 cents is constrained, and they're not a full participant. I mean, the members of the advisory committee make the advisory committee decisions. So it is attending a meeting of another committee isn't the same as being one of the principal participants.
Rob?
I don't want to get in debate,
Okay.
but you're just talking about a bull session, David. In a bull session, they don't have any, they're not participants either because there's nothing really decided. Because I know you, because I've known you for years, I think what you want is to have some long, drawn-out conversations back and forth, and we talk about things and they range all over the place. And A, you can't run an actual meeting like that, all right? A meeting that decides anything. And B, I think you'd get the same 6 people you get to town meeting or things like this. Or, you know, it's a very small universe of people who, unless their ox is getting gored specifically, it's a very small universe of people who have the desire to sit around after work and take time out of their schedules and miss, you know, whatever wonderful things on television tonight and have a bull session about the operation of the community. And frankly, most of those kind of people run for stuff anyway, you know? So I get your ideal universe, but I don't know what you hope to accomplish with this kind of thing.
So I object to characterizing it as a bull session. It is certainly true that we won't get 7,000 registered voters to show up. And it is also true that the sort of thing that I'm proposing in item 1 is not a decision-making body. It's a discussion body. And one of the things that is likely to make people get involved is if they believe that their ideas are really seriously going to be considered, and that if the group tends to favor something, that will show up in the warrant as an article to be voted on. And there was...
So people are more likely to go to a no-stakes meeting than a meeting with actual stakes.
People are more likely to go to a meeting where they're really going to be heard, where they can talk about what they want to talk about, and where they know that what they have to say will be seriously considered, not regarded as bull and ignored by the decision-making body, but rather the decision-making body.
Part of the decision-making body.
the town meeting is very constrained about what can be discussed.
If I may, I hear what you're saying in regards to an open forum like that, and I guess what I'm suggesting at town meeting, attended a couple, and I did feel, as you have, a little uneducated about what I was voting on, unless it was a particular issue that I personally had more knowledge about. And I think that the more educated we are about the issues, the better off we would be. And that would lend itself to some form of communication, be it physical or virtual, to inform us of what the article or warrant is about well before the town meeting. I also know that there are last minute things that end up on town warrant, but if that's a small percentage, then, you know, I guess we can cope with that. But having an open session, I think, goes a long way in possible participation by residents, because I do feel as though I'm not listened to at some point, and that I don't have a say in what the ultimate decisions are going to be, for probably a whole host of reasons why I might not even be aware of. But that's the whole process of what we're talking about, is to educate us on what has to happen, what should happen, what the constraints are on elected officials, so we're just more involved in what is going on and more knowledgeable. Bull sessions, if you want to call it that, can get out of hand, you know, and it can start aligning people on a pro or con, but if it's moderated, you know, held to an hour, held to an hour and a half, and a strict moderator timing things, then at least people could feel as though they are participating, they are being listened to, and hopefully the end result would be a more fair back and forth, instead of you already know what the decision is going to be because of whatever preconceptions the decision makers have. That's what I see as a value of a pre-town meeting. There's just, as you say, too many constraints for a lot of reasons at the actual town meeting.
Okay, I think we've gotten that. Yes. Try to keep and everybody should be respectful in everything in any meeting, including this one. The next one is minimizing discussion at town meeting.
So I have to correct that.
All right.
We are not minimizing discussion at town meeting.
Okay.
Sorry, Rob was talking to me at the time. It is not minimizing.
When you wrote that, I was, that's...
You should have said something to me. But what? I think by minimizing discussion at town meeting, and I realize we minimize to save time, but it's also giving the wrong message to the individuals who are there, meaning that their viewpoint, their question, their comment doesn't matter. So it's, yeah, it really should be not minimizing discussion at town
Yeah,
meeting.
because we didn't have strict rules about that until last 10 years or so. We put in a bylaw that talked about the number of times people could speak and how long they could speak.
So this is the circle we go in, right? When Dan Winslow became moderator, that's his bylaw. He did this whole town meeting group. Were you on that?
I was on the advisory board then.
Okay, you're on the advisory board. I was on that. And one of the things Dan came up with was that people don't like to go to town meeting because two or three people talk too much. So we have to cut down the debate. So, you know, we're kind of, we've gone full circle now, right? Like, oh, we don't have enough debate. That's why people don't go to town meeting. Oh, we had too much debate. That's why people don't go to town meeting. So it's just interesting from a, you know, holistic thing. Now, Frank Gross, when he was moderator, a lot of this is like moderator styles, right?
Yeah, I remember.
You know, and Frank would be gentle about cutting people off. He did it subtly, you know, and he would be very selective on picking people like a third time, you know, and so we didn't have rules on it. But when Dan came in, that's when those rules came in.
To the point, though, of open discussion or not minimizing, not maximizing,
not minimizing.
So, my understanding from attending town meeting is people are called out when they keep on repeating the same point. I mean, we don't need to hear it 15 times. But I feel like discussion and debate is encouraged if people are bringing up a variety of opinions and information that may inform better choices. Am I wrong there? I mean, that's not your feeling? You feel like people just get cut off even if they're saying something important?
I think sometimes at town meeting it comes down to 2 or 3 people are bantering back and forth. But oftentimes that's healthy discussion because it encourages the next question. So it's not going to be each and every time, but there are some things that are really what I call heart questions, and everybody wants to get their point across. And then there's others that clearly for the first time you're hearing about this, and before you're going to take a vote that's either connected with money or not connected with money, you want to know as much as you can. Because you don't want to spend next town meeting having to reverse it or add to it or what have you.
Okay, the next item is more contested elections.
More participants.
That's my assumption. I wrote it with the. I know that's.
Oh, okay.
It has a question mark because I wrote it down because I've heard it from people in town that they don't love the fact that a lot of the elections are not contested because it means that the same people are running, and either no one wants to run against them for a political reason, or that there's just apathy, right? So, more contested elections will encourage people to look at issues and make decisions, right? I think we said that elections themselves can drive engagement. So if we can encourage contested elections, even if they're friendly between people that like each other, but just want to encourage debate and discussion, that might be one way to encourage participation. So I've heard that from people.
Everybody can remember the infamous election of 1991 when we had 5 contested boards plus 17 override questions. And paper ballots, big paper ballots that had to be done by hand. But there was a big turnout, as you can imagine. Goes to the point, and there were some issues in town that brought out people to run against incumbents. There were some school issues, there were some town issues, and it ended up, you did get participation. I think we got at least 30% voter turnout for a local election, which is very high. Might have been even more than that.
So, normally I'm a big non-fan of term limits because we have elections and you can elect anyone you want. But, I mean, when's the last time we had an incumbent selectman actually get beaten? I think it was Jim Gipfrey, maybe, wasn't he? And that was 10, 12 years ago.
Kevin.
Kevin? What? Oh, last
Like
time.
last year.
Scott Bugby. Scott Bugby. Okay. There you go. But other than that, it's been, years. So people just wait for people to cycle off, and if they don't cycle off, nobody ever runs for anything. So, I mean, there's something to that. Maybe that would. And if you're running, you get like 40 of your friends to come out, and that might be 40 people who don't vote before. So that ups the election, the number of people.
Yeah, so I feel like all of this stuff, running for boards and interest in town government, except for the chosen few that just do it their whole lives, is really pretty cyclical, right? I mean, you're in a place where I was 12 years ago when my son was very young and I was very interested in town government, very interested in the schools and how the money was spent here. And I'm here tonight because I feel like with the young families are involved, right? And people that are still interested and want to offer their thoughts and skills to the town who have the time now are involved. And there's this middle area of people that are kind of missing, right? The people whose kids are in high school, college, they're going back to work full time if they were doing other stuff. So I think when people used to complain to me that nobody was running for anything, I used to tell them, you should run, and I will help you. And we actually got people to run for things. So I think the only way for people to run for office or for anything in town is for them to be encouraged by their friends and their groups. And I mean, there's always someone among any neighborhood group or book group or something that just is aware and interested and smart. And I mean, I think that comes from residents. I don't think it's anything a town can legislate or hope for, right?
Well, I do think that one thing that came over here is about having orientation, right? So part of it's just orientation to town, but there's certainly an element of orientation to public service that could be done, right? So whether it's an annual meeting where you can come and see and talk to board members and say, okay, what is it like to be on a board? What is your time commitment? These are things that, this is my first board. I have a 3-month-old baby at home. I don't even know what I'm doing here, but but I wanted to do it. But I had to have a big heart-to-heart with the Board of Selectmen that asked me to join and say, what's this going to look like? Because this is what I can commit, and is that okay? And I think there can be some things that town can do to make those discussions happen in a more formal way versus just being, hey, you should run. I think it's definitely a combination of your friends and family supporting you and saying, hey, you should run, but also the town making it clear what that looks like and making it feel like it's accessible. Right.
I had comments on part of that was for each committee, what does it take? Your time-wise, and what are the responsibilities of? For example, Conservation Commission has trouble getting people on that. Are there laws that you should be looking at, state laws or something, and what do they have jurisdiction over? That an able body may say, I'll be on a committee, but what is it asking of them? The planning board, when they have an associate member position, that they try to interview them and say, it comes the next election, are you willing to run for it? And if they're kind of saying, well, I only want to try this for a year, that they might not get picked. But if there was a guideline, a video or something that you could watch to say, oh, if you're on the school committee also needs a representative to King Philip. They need someone to look at the budget. They need bylaws and policies. And it's like, oh, I just signed up for one committee, and now you're giving me 2 assignments, 2 or 3 assignments. And just to have that all explained ahead of time.
Yeah, it would have been nice to know when you got elected to the school committee, you'd be out 140 nights a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, but only 2 nights a year, 2 nights a month were actual meetings.
And the selectmen, some of the committees, there's things that need to be done during the daytime. And if you're a 9 to 5 work person, I can't stop in the town hall during that time. So somebody from the committee needs to be aware that part of it's be available during the day.
Yeah. Okay, having options that don't require physical presence at certain times. Virtual participation. I don't think town meetings are allowed to, by law, you're not allowed to vote from home through your computer or even comment. But perhaps that's something that will gradually evolve in the future as more and more people are involved in the internet, and perhaps that might become something within 10 or 15 years, I think. Then we have open and honest engagement by all. I think that's what we've been trying to do here tonight, plus all these other comments that we've been discussing, I think sort of go toward that end. Then we have the miscellaneous comments. First one is town should be open to conducting experiments to see what works to improve things. I think we've talked about some of those ideas already tonight. more recruitment for females on boards and committees. And it says need to recruit. I'm not sure how that would be done, but perhaps it's just a comment that we have up here.
Well, it sounds to me, based on your comment before, that the selectmen recruited you.
Yeah, I mean, I think they reached out to people they thought would be interested, right? But I also think that, I can't speak to their intention, but I do think that there could be more done to look at boards and say, what perspectives are we missing, whether that's parents of young children or seniors or women, or, you know, looking at the composition. We do tend to have a very heavily white male age 40 to 65 representation on a lot of the boards, just factually, right? So, you know, and that's not the makeup of the town. So I did not write that comment. I did put the little check mark saying I agree, but I think there are certainly ways to, you know, encourage women and other people that are not being represented on these boards. And I think part of it is, you know, the time commitment that falls on certain groups on occasion, you know, and thinking about ways to make those things feel more accessible to people that don't feel like they can make those commitments.
And I would say follow up, a PSA, much like an orientation video, talking towards these points to encourage anyone to run for office, even a young person. What's the youngest that they would be eligible to run for office?
I think it's 18.
18.
18.
I mean, there can be some very involved individuals that are very young that could be a firecracker for us. So a PSA of some sort that, quote, recruits could be very handy.
Okay, and then we have use NCTV for crawl news for emergencies and upcoming events, and I think we have some of that going on NCTV right now. Okay. Then we have town orientation for new residents. And the comment is welcome wagon. I remember moving here in 1986, and we did get I think we got a basket of things. I think it came from the local Chamber of Commerce, was sponsored. It was local businesses that would give you something with a little advertising on it.
Huh,
But to welcome you to town.
I was here in '86. We didn't get a basket.
So we had a welcome wagon come to our house in 1998
Yeah, in 94, we had one.
when we moved here, and
The other side of town.
it must have stopped. It must have stopped before 2000.
Before there was no welcome wagon at our door.
Yeah.
Describe what the wagon did.
So it was two women that came to the house. They had, you know, the Green Book and Norfolky stuff, all free stuff, and you know, just welcomed us and told us about the town and about themselves. And, you know, it was kind of nice because we had come from San Francisco and we end up in this little rural town in Massachusetts, and we were just like, where are we right now? So it was pretty cool. One of the things I talk to young families about, my neighbors all the time now, because we're at the point now in our neighborhood where it's starting to turn over like it was when we moved there 20 years ago. And if you're working in Boston or you have a baby and you're home with a baby, or if you're working anywhere, until your children are in school and you become so invested in the town and you actually know too much, and not about persons, about town government, the board of selectmen, the school committees, there is really no way to learn stuff here, and it's a very hard, lonely place to be, I think, because it's a rural community. A lot of the areas aren't neighborhoods, and you know, I don't know how you fix it. I think that's just the way the town is. But if you move here and you don't have kids, or you move here and you're past kids, I have no idea how you learn and integrate. I don't know. It's tough. I don't know if there's an answer.
Yeah. In my experience, we did move here without kids, and we were working 70 hours a week. And it wasn't until I got laid off and I started volunteering did I become a member of the community, and that was well after 10 years.
Yes.
So I agree with you, it is lonely. It was hard to get to know our neighbors. One thing I did observe, which I thought was a great idea, new neighbors moved in, they invited us to their house for a cookout. And so that's how they got to know all the surrounding neighbors.
Right.
And it helped all of us get to know our neighbors too.
Right.
So sometimes that's all it takes,
Yeah.
an invitation.
You get a bylaw mandating
A bylaw that,
you have to have a party for your neighbors.
Where's our cookout?
When you move in.
So beer truck. There you go.
Show me the cake.
brought in a barbecue pit type thing.
Oh,
We-
that's fun.
It was really nice.
we moved on Halloween 1986, and we had nothing in the house. So I ran over and got candy and decided to stand there inside the house for people to come because I wanted to make sure we didn't get egged because we weren't giving out candy. And I must have met 200 or 300. That there used to be big crowds for Halloween. 200 or 300, of which, of course, the kids I didn't recognize. They were all in costumes, but the neighbors were out in the street following the kids around. And, you know, I got to see, they didn't come to the door, of course, but I got to see who they were. So then when later on you could say, oh, I saw you at Halloween. You lived down the street, and introduce myself, and that how it worked.
Candy without Walgreens. Where'd you get candy 25 years ago?
Well, we moved from Framingham, so I got them at the Walgreens in Framingham and brought it down.
If this tells you anything, Jeff and I are neighbors, and we just found this out like 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God. How neighbors.
And we live on like a dead end street with like 10 houses. And we just found it out.
Like 40 times. She never answered it.
Okay. Well, we promised to be out of here by 9 o'clock, so or they're going to lock us in for the night. Have town boards and departments give an annual presentation on what they do, what their priorities are, and what their budget is. Now, there is such a thing. There used to be sent to every house in town a printed annual report that said that summarized what boards did. Each board wrote their own summary. We don't do that anymore. You have to ask for an annual report. They don't make very many of them. So this idea would be something where these presentations, I suppose, would be done on television, on NCTV, or
Presumably done at some public venue, but also carried on NCTV.
right. And those would have to be posted meetings by those particular boards. It could be a posted meeting by just generally for all the boards.
Probably it would have to be posted for each board.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, that was my item. I didn't think about the open meeting law consequences, but clearly, if there is going to be any deliberation among the members of a board or committee, then it does need to be posted for that board or committee. And multiple boards and committees can certainly post for a single meeting at a single time and place.
And certainly could be done on Facebook or, well, the town page. We've already heard discussion tonight about the pros and cons of how the town page is working. But I suppose if it worked a little better, then that would be a good place to put some of this information. But really, you've got to get it into people's faces that this is what the board does. This is what they do. It can't always be up to people to just have to go try to find it. Sometimes government has to try and find you.
With the current open meeting law and are having a 3-person board of selectmen, if you try to do it on Facebook or some venue like that, if two or more if more than one selectman is involved in the discussion, it's a violation of the open meeting law. It can't be for a Facebook thing. It has to be in person. Right, so there was a new item that materialized at the top of the other page.
Okay. Institute
Institutionalized.
and support a web-based forum for discussing warrant articles for a few weeks prior to the town meeting.
Right,
think
so we
did that.
tried that. It was certainly not institutionalized. It was not very well supported. It ran into the difficulty that because it wasn't in person, there were restrictions on anything that could be considered deliberation among a quorum of a public body. But I can certainly imagine that if this were institutionalized and supported, it could be a much more active discussion among people who are not board or committee members, and a number of board or committee members not constituting a quorum could participate.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for all the ideas and discussion we've had tonight. I think it's been very good. Our board meets again, our committee meets again next Wednesday at 7 o'clock. 2 weeks, I'm sorry, 2 weeks from today.
Can you just tell me who the board persons are and your email, please? Are you the chair of this board?
Yes. I'm the chair, Jonathan Smith,
Okay.
Rob Garrity, Tony Kennedy.
Oh, it's on here?
Yeah, and
Wait,
Anthony's not here, but this says
yeah, Anthony
Right.
Torrey is not
he's
here.
the person that I should,
our general website.
got it.
General email.
We have a general email website,
So,
which Anthony has been very good about it, yeah,
Kristen, Tony, Rob, Anthony, and you.
yeah.
And we currently have 2 openings.
2 openings.
So if anyone here is interested in joining, meetings are once a month, sometimes twice a month.
Twice
Have a PSA that tells us what about your committee and the responsibilities and duties?
That was it.
I think you had a good idea by by being here tonight, an idea of what we're up to, what we're trying to accomplish.
I mean, what I can add is like this is a multi-year process, right? So if you join this committee, it could be for multiple years. But I think the idea is there's a lot of directions we could take this work, and what we were hoping to use tonight for is to help us figure out where the energy is and where some ideas are, so that we can come up with ideas to present to the board, to bring to town meeting, to codify some of these things into actionable items. And, you know, that'll be done over time based on kind of the priorities that we're laying out.
What about the time commitment? You meet twice a month, do you meet during the course of the day? Is it in the evening, that type of thing?
We're still figuring it out, but-
We're figuring it out. It tends to be on Wednesdays. It tends to be at 7 o'clock, and it tends to be in a little office next to the town administrator's office upstairs.
Currently once a month. This month we're meeting twice, once to go over what we've heard here and then have our normal meeting.
And then we'll have to meet in March to get ready for any warrant articles that we may develop from discussions that we've had and some research that we're trying to do.
And it sounds, again, we've only had 3 meetings so far, right? So we're still kind of feeling our way through it. But my sense is that at some point we'll split up into like smaller groups once we have a full committee to tackle certain issues. So like if you,
How many members and term?
I don't know it.
7 members, of which,
What's our term?
and, what?
Life or good behavior.
Yes.
For the,
And
it's technically a temporary committee, so
it's a 2-year term, basically, as established by the selectmen.
and I think, you know, depending on what work stream you end up being interested in, like, you know, if you were doing a work stream that was wanting to talk to different town departments, you might end up doing something during the day, right? I think it depends on, right, task oriented, and basically what you can offer, right? But I think it's been manageable for me, and I'm working full time in Boston with 2 small children, but I'm also being very clear about my time commitment to the group. So it's about kind of how you manage that for yourself. But we definitely need some more members, and that would be great if anyone's interested. So
Yeah, and our meetings have so far tended to be about 90 minutes long, but that could change once we dig into stuff in particular. So that's why it's sort of good to divide up the responsibilities of different topics. I think we will among ourselves and then come together and go over what people have discovered and researched. So thank you all for coming. Hope, yes, and we have to have a formal vote to adjourn, even though it's just a forum.
Before you do that, I just want to thank the committee for holding this forum. I appreciate the opportunity to offer suggestions and comments. So thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor? We're adjourned. Now we have to clean up.